Hello friends, James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com with your thought for the day, February 13th, 2017. I received an email recently from a listener saying that he wished he could go just 1 week without hearing the word Orwellian implied in some news article or news commentary, and I agree, I fully sympathize with that position. However, having said that, a news article came across the newswires this weekend that I can't think of a better word than Orwellian. Maybe you can help me think of one. Here it is. CIA honors Saudi crown prince for efforts against terrorism. And there is Trump's pick for CIA chief Michael Pompeo giving the medal to the Saudi Crown Prince. Reading from the article, the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Interior, received a medal on Friday from the CIA for his distinct intelligence-related counter-terrorism work and his contributions to ensure international peace and security. And if that isn't all Orwellian enough, the name of the medal, it's named after George Tenet. Yes, that George Tenet. Unbelievable. Just so galling and so disgusting in so many different ways, especially because, as Corbett reporters do not have to be told, of course, Saudi Arabia has been there from the very inception of the engineered destruction of Syria as one of the engineers, alongside Turkey and Qatar and the US and Israel and their allies, working to destabilize Syria and ship in the terrorists and arm and fund and train them in Syria. So right there, that makes it enough of a joke. But of course, the other trap is to go the other way and to say that Saudi Arabia is the root of all of this terrorism, and they are the dastardly masterminds behind international terrorism, and they alone, which itself is another form of Psy-Op, which I've debunked, for example, when we talked about the 28 pages and how that's the limited hangout version of 9/11 quote-unquote truth, where it's really just trying to give a get into jail free card for any administration to play against the Saudis whenever they want, saying, look, it's all the Saudis. We're not helping them at all in places like Syria. It's all Saudi Arabia. So it's such a multi-level psyop, but this picture should be enough to will make you want to vomit. Perhaps retch-inducing can suffice here as a word instead of Orwellian. But the other level of this, of course, is that it reintroduces us into that war on terror paradigm, the war of terror that has continued without a break in the chain from Bush to Obama to Trump, and it continues apace. And now everyone is talking about the executive order protecting the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States, and everyone's arguing about what this means, and oh, it's not a Muslim ban, it's a ban on Muslims, it's blah, 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 it's about terrorism. No, this is not about terrorism. It fundamentally is not about terrorism. It is at least happily for the Trump administration, which is heavily loaded with people who happen to have ties to facial recognition and biometric surveillance companies. It happens to, as we discussed before, embed this little nugget about biometric entry exit tracking systems that are going to be part of this executive order. I think that's at least one of the levels on which this is operating. But of course, another one is to reintroduce everyone into the war of terror paradigm. So now you even have quote-unquote independent alternative media sources that used to talk about war on terror being a intelligence agency sponsored fraud are now talking about, oh, which terrorists come from which countries, which scary bearded Muslims can we hate on this week, when you look at the actual, look at this. The biometric entry exit tracking system and the people in the Trump administration who are heavily tied into the biometric surveillance companies that profit from that hype. Well, if that doesn't remind you of this, then I don't know what does. Of course, this is Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, the blithering idiot who couldn't even light his underwear on fire successfully in order to cause the explosion on flight 259 or whatever that was, coming into Detroit back in Christmas 2009, flight 253. Just a total blithering idiot, at par for the course for these patsies that are used in these intelligence Psy-Op operations, can't even tie their own shoelaces without being directed by men in black about what to do. Well, as we already know what that was all about, and that came out fairly quickly, even from fake news sources like Washington Post, which were all too happy to quote people like Michael Chertoff at the time, talking about this scary man who couldn't light his underwear on fire, saying, "This plot is an example of something we've known could exist in theory, and in order to be able to detect it, you've got to find some way of detecting things in the parts of the body that aren't easy to get at," Chertoff said. "It's either pat-downs or imaging, or otherwise hoping the bad guys haven't figured it out," and I guess bad guys have figured it out. And so, of course, as we know, that was used as the excuse for the rollout of the naked body scanners that are now par for the course, and everyone is internalized and just takes as normal, standard, everyday procedure. It was, at that time, somewhat controversial. Can you even cast your mind back that far? And they were already due to be rolled out at the airports. It's just that this Christmas Day non-bombing was the perfect excuse for rolling them out. And, as it turned out, Chertoff was a lobbyist for Rapiscan, the company that made millions selling these scanners to the airports. Wow, what a surprise. It's almost as if this is a terror industrial complex, an actual quote used by Colin Powell, by the way. Look that one up. So, that's one example and one aspect of what's going on. But as I say, this still fosters the overall idea that it's these scary boogeymen Muslims who can't set their own underwear on fire, who are going to kill us all and ruin Western civilization. We can't withstand this threat to our existence. When, again, as it turns out, these blithering morons who are the face of global terror cannot do anything without being aided by the intelligence agencies. Something that, again, came out during the hearings about Abdul Muttalib. You might remember Patrick F. Kennedy, who was at the State Department at the time. He recently got shuffled out in the changeover from Obama to Trump, but he let some of the goods slip about what was really happening with regards to Abdul Muttalib and how he got on the plane in the first place. How did he get his visa to travel to the United States?
We have a request from a law enforcement agency to not revoke the visa. We came across information. We said, this is a dangerous person. We were ready to revoke the visa. We then went to the community and said, should we revoke this visa? And one of the members, and we'd be glad to give you that in private, said, please do not revoke this visa. We have eyes on this person. We are following this person who has the visa for the purpose of trying to roll up an entire network, not just stop one person.
Yes, they were going to revoke his visa, but another law enforcement agency, I'll tell you about that in private, demanded that they not revoke the visa, let him get on the plane. So he got on the plane, did his little underwear firecracker nonsense, and lo and behold, Chertoff and his gang make millions of dollars on their naked body scanners. This is the way it works. This is the way it always works. This is how these scary terrorist boogeymen are able to come into the country no matter what ridiculous executive orders you put in their place. The intelligence agencies override stuff like that whenever they want, exactly as they did with Abdul Muttalib, and exactly as they did for Osama bin Laden's boys back in Afghanistan. Remember that? Does anyone remember Michael Springman on Visas for Terrorists? He wrote the book, Visas for Al-Qaeda, CIA handouts that rocked the world. He worked in the Jeddah consulate in the late 1980s when he was consistently overridden in his attempt to not issue visas to people who were clearly not able or should not be issued visas to go to the United States. He was overridden time and time and time again by the CIA in the State Department, who were there at the Jeddah consulate, who said, let them in. These are Osama bin Laden's golden boys. And that was when Osama bin Laden was America's man in Afghanistan. Remember that? So they let them in, and they certainly got trained up, and then they got sent back to Afghanistan, and lo and behold, 9/11 happened. And 9/11, 15 of the so-called patsy hijackers got their visas at the Jeddah consulate. No surprise there. For people who don't remember this is an exceptionally important story, as we are being re-indoctrinated into this idea that these scary Muslim boogeyman terrorists are swarming into the country, as if they're not being aided every step of the way by the intelligence agencies that then have the gall to give counter-terrorism awards to their terrorism buddies. For people who don't remember this, Brock West is working on making this into a video version for the Corbett Report Extras YouTube channel as we speak, so that'll be up in the next next couple of days. Please get that out to everyone who is still in this phony war of terror paradigm and falling for it hook, line, and sinker yet again, when it is always the intelligence agencies that let these events happen, force them to happen, make them happen, shepherd them along, protect them, and make sure that they get their agenda out of it, whether that's naked body scanners or biometric facial recognition scanners. It's all part of a plan. So, I don't know. Orwellian seems like a pretty good word for something like this, but hey, what do I know, right? Anyway, lots of info here, so I will put all of the sources, of course, in the show notes for this at corbettreport.com. Please do take this information and get it out to the four corners. People need to get wrenched out of this war of terror narrative before it is too late. James Corbett, corbettreport.com.